The 1970s gave us some incredible music, but not every song that came through our speakers left us feeling good. Some tracks stuck with us for entirely different reasons, carrying messages and imagery that were just a little too heavy, a little too real, or a little too disturbing for young minds to process. These are 10 songs that traumatized 70s kids. Number 10. Alone Again, Naturally, by Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Alone again, naturally.
When this melancholic ballad hit number 1 in 1972, nobody expected a pop song to be quite this bleak. Gilbert O'Sullivan penned what might be one of the most depressing chart toppers ever recorded, and kids listening to AM radio got an earful of despair they weren't prepared for.
Truly I'm indeed alone again.
The song opens with the narrator contemplating throwing himself from a nearby tower after being left at the altar. From there, it only gets darker. O'Sullivan moves through a litany of losses, recounting the deaths of both his parents and questioning the existence of God. The gentle piano melody and O'Sullivan's soft vocal delivery made it easy listening on the surface, but the content was anything but light.
Alone again, naturally.
Radio stations played it constantly throughout 1972 and into 1973. It became inescapable. Kids heard it at the supermarket, in the car, at the dentist's office. The juxtaposition of such a beautiful melody with lyrics about suicide, death, and abandonment created a confusing, emotional experience. Many young listeners didn't fully grasp all the references, but they understood enough to feel unsettled.
Alone again, naturally.
The song spent 6 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It sold millions of copies worldwide. O'Sullivan's pain resonated with adult listeners dealing with their own losses and disappointments. But for children and teenagers, it introduced heavy concepts they might not have encountered otherwise. The casual references to suicide were particularly jarring in an era when mental health wasn't openly discussed.
Leaving her to start with a heart so badly broke.
Number 9. Timothy by The Boys. Released in 1970, Timothy stands out as one of the most disturbing songs to ever receive significant radio play. The track tells the story of 3 miners trapped in a cave-in. When rescuers finally reach them, only 2 survive. The 3rd miner, Timothy, is nowhere to be found. The implication is clear and horrifying. The survivors ate Timothy to stay alive. The song was written by Rupert Holmes, who would later find fame with Escape, the Pina Colada song. He created Timothy as a commentary on the darker aspects of human nature and survival. The Boys performed it with an upbeat, almost cheerful musical arrangement that made the gruesome subject matter even more disturbing. This contrast between sound and content left many young listeners deeply uncomfortable. Program directors at some radio stations banned it once they realized what the song was actually about. Others played it anyway, and it climbed to number 17 on the Billboard charts. Kids debated what happened to Timothy on school playgrounds. Some refused to believe the cannibalism interpretation. Others were fascinated by the macabre tale. The controversy helped the song sell, but it also sparked conversations about what was appropriate for top 40 radio. Parents complained, critics debated. Meanwhile, The Boys never had another hit, forever associated with this one shocking story about survival cannibalism set to a catchy rock beat. Number 8. Run, Joey, Run by David Geddes. In 1975, David Geddes delivered what might be the ultimate teenage tragedy song. Run, Joey, Run tells the story of a young couple whose relationship is discovered by the girl's father, with fatal consequences. The dramatic narrative unfolds through dialogue and description, building to a violent conclusion that left young listeners shaken.
So run, Joey, run, Joey, run.
The song begins with Julie calling Joey. warning him that her father knows about their relationship and found a letter Joey wrote. She tells Joey to run and hide. Joey refuses, determined to face Julie's father and prove his love is genuine. When he arrives at Julie's house, her father is waiting with a gun. Julie steps between them to protect Joey, and her father accidentally shoots and kills her.
Daddy, please don't. It wasn't his fault. He means so much.
The production featured theatrical vocal performances and sound effects that made the tragedy feel immediate and real. Geddes sang the various parts, switching between Joey's perspective and Julie's dying words. The gunshot sound effect was particularly traumatic for younger listeners. Many kids who heard it on the radio were genuinely disturbed by what they'd just experienced.
Suddenly, a shot rang out, and I saw you.
Number 7. Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
Terry Jacks took a French song by Jacques Brel, rewrote the English lyrics, and created one of 1974's biggest hits. Seasons in the Sun is a dying man's farewell to his loved ones, and it dominated radio play for months, exposing millions of young listeners to an unflinching meditation on mortality.
But the hills that we climbed were just seasons out of time.
The narrator is dying, and he knows it. He says goodbye to his best friend, his father, and his wife, Michelle. Each verse acknowledges different relationships and memories, while accepting that death is coming. The melody is bouncy and almost cheerful, which created a strange disconnect with the heavy subject matter. Kids sang along without fully grasping they were singing about someone's final moments on Earth.
By Michelle, my little one.
The song went to number 1 in multiple countries. In the United States, it topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks. It sold over 6 million copies worldwide. Its ubiquity meant there was no escaping it. Even children too young to understand death were singing the chorus. Older kids and teenagers found themselves confronting mortality in a new way, through a pop song that refused to romanticize or soften the experience of dying.
Wish that we could both be there. We had joy, we had fun.
The references to having too much wine and trusting a friend with his wife added adult themes that sailed over younger listeners' heads, but registered uncomfortably with teenagers. The song's cheerful sound made it feel appropriate for all audiences, but the content dealt with subjects many parents would have preferred to introduce more carefully. Terry Jacks created something that sounded happy, but carried profound sadness. And young listeners felt that contradiction, even if they couldn't articulate it.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
Number 6. Wildfire by Michael Martin Murphey. In 1975, Michael Martin Murphey's Wildfire galloped onto the charts, bringing with it a ghost story that captured imaginations and triggered nightmares. The song tells the tale of a young woman who disappears while searching for her lost pony during a blizzard, only to return as a phantom riding through the night. The story unfolds through vivid imagery. A girl's pony, named Wildfire, runs away during a winter storm. She goes out searching for the horse and vanishes in the blizzard. Years later, when storms hit, people claim to hear and see her ghostly form still searching for Wildfire, forever trapped in that fatal quest. The haunting narrative is delivered over acoustic guitar and building orchestration that created an eerie atmosphere. Murphy's vocals added to the spectral quality. His delivery made listeners feel the cold wind and the desperation of the search. The production built gradually, starting spare and intimate, then adding layers of sound that mimicked a gathering storm. By the final chorus, the arrangement swelled with strings and backing vocals that sounded almost like wind howling through bare trees. The song reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the decade's most memorable story songs.
And on a wildfire, we're both gonna go.
The legend-like quality of Wildfire made it feel like it could be true. Unlike obviously fictional songs, this one presented itself as a folktale passed down through generations. That quasi-historical framing made it more frightening. Kids wondered if there really was a girl still searching for her pony somewhere out there in the winter darkness. The ambiguity between fiction and folklore created unease that pure fantasy wouldn't have. For kids hearing it, particularly those in rural areas where blizzards were a real danger, the tale hit close to home. Anyone who lived where winters were harsh could imagine getting lost in a storm. Anyone with a beloved pet understood the impulse to search, even in dangerous conditions. The song validated that love while showing its potential tragic consequences. The idea of someone dying while searching for a beloved animal resonated with young listeners who had their own pets. The ghost story element added supernatural dread. Some kids became afraid during winter storms, imagining they might hear wildfire's hoofbeats. Others developed fears about loved ones disappearing. The song took common childhood experiences, owning a pet and experiencing bad weather, and transformed them into a cautionary ghost story that felt all too possible. Number 5. I Don't Like Mondays by The Boomtown Rats. Released in 1979, this song stands apart from typical pop fare because it's based on a real tragedy. On January 29, 1979, 16-year-old Brenda Ann Spencer opened fire on students at Grover Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego, killing 2 adults and injuring 8 children and a police officer. When asked why she did it, she said she didn't like Mondays and wanted to liven up the day.
Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't.
Bob Geldof of the Boomtown Rats was in Atlanta when he heard about the shooting. Horrified and fascinated by Spencer's casual explanation, he wrote, "I don't like Mondays." The song recreates the shooting from Spencer's perspective, describing her actions with a detached, almost cheerful tone that makes the violence more disturbing. The bouncing piano melody contrasts sharply with lyrics about bullets and broken lives. The song became a massive hit in the UK and across Europe, reaching number 1 in multiple countries. In the United States, where the shooting occurred, radio play was more limited, but the song still received significant airtime. Kids who heard it were disturbed by several elements. The knowledge that this was a true story, the realization that a teenager had committed the violence, and the casual attitude toward murder expressed in both Spencer's quote and the song's treatment of it. Some radio stations refused to play it, citing concerns about glorifying violence. Others argued it was an important artistic response to a national tragedy. For young listeners, especially those near Spencer's age, the song was terrifying because it showed that violence could come from someone just like them, motivated by something as mundane as disliking Mondays. The idea that school could be a place of such horror was relatively new in 1979, and this song forced that reality into popular consciousness. Number 4. Fire and Rain by James Taylor.
I've seen fire and I've seen rain.
James Taylor's 1970 breakthrough hit sounds gentle and introspective, but it deals with subjects that were heavy for listeners of any age. Fire and Rain is Taylor's meditation on personal loss, mental health struggles, and addiction, wrapped in a beautiful melody that made it palatable for top 40 radio, but no less intense for those paying attention to the words. The song's first verse references the death of Suzanne Schneur, a childhood friend of Taylor's who died by suicide while he was recording in London. Taylor's bandmates kept the news from him because they didn't want to interrupt the recording sessions. When he finally learned of her death, weeks after it happened, he was devastated. The verse captures his anguish and his inability to say goodbye.
Seen sunny days that I thought would never end.
The subsequent verses touch on Taylor's time in psychiatric institutions and his struggles with heroin addiction. References to sweet dreams, flying machines, and sunny days are contrasted with the darker reality of his experiences. The song is an attempt to make sense of pain and find hope, despite overwhelming circumstances. For adult listeners, It resonated as an honest expression of struggle. For younger listeners, it introduced ideas about mental illness, suicide, and drug addiction that many had never encountered. Fire and Rain reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It established James Taylor as a major artist and became one of the defining songs of the singer-songwriter movement. Kids heard it constantly in 1970 and 1971. Many didn't understand all the references, but they felt the sadness in Taylor's voice. Those who did understand found themselves confronting serious real-world issues through a pop song, and some weren't ready for that weight.
I've seen fire and I've seen rain.
Number 3. Escape, the Pina Colada Song by Rupert Holmes.
If you like pina coladas, getting caught.
When Rupert Holmes released Escape in 1979, it became an instant hit, climbing to number 1 and becoming one of the year's biggest songs. On the surface, it's a fun, tropical-flavored tune about personal ads and rediscovering love. But when you actually listen to the story, it's deeply unsettling, depicting two people actively trying to cheat on each other, only to discover they've been responding to each other's personal ads. The narrator is bored with his relationship and admits to being tired of his lady. Instead of communicating with his partner or ending the relationship, he reads the personal section looking for someone new. He finds an ad from a woman seeking adventure, and he responds. They agree to meet at a bar. When he arrives, he discovers the woman who placed the ad is his own girlfriend, who was also looking to cheat.
Yes, I like pina coladas, getting caught.
The song presents this as a happy ending. They laugh about the situation and realize they both still want the same things. The chorus repeats the playful image of pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, tropical escapism that sounds romantic until you remember it's framing mutual attempted infidelity as cute. But for listeners paying attention, the message is troubling. Both partners were willing to betray each other. Neither attempted to fix their relationship through honest communication. Their reunion is built on the mutual discovery of attempted infidelity, not genuine reconciliation. The song's popularity spoke to adult anxieties about long-term relationships growing stale. But its omnipresence on radio meant impressionable young listeners absorbed its lessons about love and commitment. The catchy melody made it a favorite at school dances and skating rinks, places where kids and teenagers were forming their first ideas about relationships. What were they learning from singing along to Escape?
That you like pina coladas, getting caught.
Kids and teenagers hearing it absorbed a strange lesson about relationships. The upbeat music and Holmes's cheerful delivery masked the dysfunction at the heart of the story. Young listeners learned that boredom in relationships might lead to cheating, that partners might simultaneously betray each other, and that this could somehow be funny or romantic. The song's popularity meant it was everywhere, teaching a generation of kids a warped version of how relationships work.
If you like pina coladas, getting caught.
Number 2. Shannon by Henry Gross. In 1976, Henry Gross released Shannon, a tribute to his beloved dog who had drowned. The song became a surprise hit, reaching number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. For young listeners who loved their pets, Shannon was absolutely devastating, confronting them with the reality of animal mortality in the most direct way possible. Gross had been friends with Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, whose dog Shannon had drowned. Moved by Wilson's grief, Gross wrote a tribute song. The lyrics describe a perfect relationship with a dog, all the joy and companionship Shannon brought, and then the sudden tragedy of her drowning. The simple, straightforward storytelling made it accessible to listeners of all ages, which meant children as young as 5 or 6 understood exactly what happened. The song paints a picture of an idyllic friendship between person and pet. Shannon was loyal, loving, and always there. Then came the drowning, described with heartbreaking simplicity. The emotional impact was immediate and profound. Gross's vocal delivery conveyed genuine grief, making the loss feel personal even to listeners who had never met Shannon. The song doesn't sugarcoat the loss. Shannon is gone, and the narrator is left with memories and grief. There's no resurrection, no miracle, no soft ending. The dog drowned, and that's the reality. For kids who had never lost a pet, the song became a frightening preview of inevitable future pain. For those who had experienced pet loss, it reopened wounds and validated their grief in a way that was both comforting and painful. What made Shannon particularly traumatic was its universality. Every kid with a pet could imagine losing that companion. The specificity of drowning made it worse. Water became a source of anxiety for many young listeners. Swimming pools, lakes, even bathtubs took on new danger in children's minds. Some kids began watching their pets obsessively near water, terrified of a repeat of Shannon's fate. Radio stations played Shannon in regular rotation throughout 1976. It appeared on easy listening stations, top 40 stations, and adult contemporary formats. Kids couldn't avoid it. Many parents fielded tearful questions about whether their family dog would drown too. Some children developed fears about letting their pets near water. The song's emotional honesty, while admirable, was almost too much for young listeners who weren't emotionally equipped to handle such direct confrontation with death. Number 1. Billy, Don't Be a Hero, by Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods. In 1974, Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods topped the charts with Billy, Don't Be a Hero, an anti-war song disguised as an upbeat pop tune. The disconnect between the cheerful musical arrangement and the tragic story made it particularly affecting for young listeners who didn't initially realize what they were singing along to. The song takes place during the American Civil War. Billy is a young soldier whose girlfriend begs him not to play the hero in battle. She wants him to come home safely. Billy ignores her plea, joins a dangerous mission, and is killed in combat. A soldier brings back Billy's drum and tells his girlfriend that Billy died a hero. The song ends with the narrator reflecting on the senselessness of Billy's death and the girlfriend's devastating loss. The Haywoods performed it with brass fanfare and an almost marching band quality that made it sound patriotic and celebratory. Kids heard it on the radio and bounced along to the melody, many not processing that they were hearing about a young man being killed in war. The upbeat tempo and major key created cognitive dissonance. How could something so sad sound so cheerful? When the meaning became clear, often through discussions at home or school, it hit hard. The timing of the song's release amplified its impact. The United States had just withdrawn from Vietnam in 1973, ending America's longest war at that time. Families were still processing the loss of over 58,000 American soldiers. Veterans were returning home with physical and psychological wounds. The country was divided over whether the war had been necessary or justified. Into this raw national moment came Billy, Don't Be a Hero, a song that questioned the very concept of military heroism. The song spent 2 weeks at number 1. It sold over 1 million copies. Coming in the wake of the Vietnam War, which had ended only a year earlier in 1973, Billy, Don't Be a Hero carried extra weight for families who had lost loved ones or welcomed home traumatized veterans. For children, it presented war not as the glorious adventure often depicted in movies and TV shows, but as a source of permanent, devastating loss. The girlfriend's perspective particularly resonated with young listeners. She begged Billy not to take unnecessary risks, and he did anyway, leaving her alone with her grief. The song suggested that heroism might not be worth the cost, a complex idea for children to process. Many kids who sang along to the catchy chorus later realized they'd been cheerfully repeating a story about death and heartbreak. These 10 songs didn't just play on the radio. They left marks on the kids who heard them. In an era before content warnings and age-appropriate playlists, young listeners encountered heavy themes through top 40 hits, often without context or preparation. These songs became part of the soundtrack of growing up in the 1970s, memorable not just for their melodies, but for the uncomfortable feelings they stirred up. If you remember hearing any of these songs as a kid, drop a comment and let us know which one affected you most. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the music we grew up with.